Welcome to Unleashing Happiness with Cecilia Hendricks, the podcast where we'll share ways to change your mindset, change your habits, and change your life. Hey all, and happy Friday. It's Cecilia with Unleashing Happiness. And I did want to kick off a little different than usual today and remind everybody that on Monday, August 21st, I'm kicking off a free course. I essentially have put together 14 days worth of steps for you to take to really kind of change your life, make some habit changes that can add joy to your day, allow you to really focus on the things that you want. And I put it together in like a very simple step-by-step, here are your tasks for the days. I'm really excited about the program. And if you're a listener of mine, you're probably not that surprised that I'm saying I'm excited, because I essentially am excited about just about everything in life. But this is one that I'm like super excited about. It's going to be my first course that I've ever put out. I'm really looking forward to it. I've put so much work into the pieces that I've put together, make sure that I'm adding information for people, make it really easy to follow. So if you would like to sign up, I'll put the link below in the show notes. You can also go to my website, ceciliahendricks.com. Right at the top, there's a link for it. There's also a pop-up that'll come up if you want to sign up. If you listen to this after August 21st, definitely still sign up. There's not an issue that you can't at that point. I'll get the emails over to you so that you can, start with day one as well. I'm not totally 100% sure how to work the email stuff. I'm not going to lie. I'm learning it as I go. But I know that I can get that stuff to you. So if you're listening to this after Monday and you want to jump in and go ahead with us and start working on this program, don't worry about being quote unquote late. You are literally never too late for anything. You can always get started with anything in life at any point. So I don't want you to feel like you can't do that. So go ahead and sign up, even if it's late, and I'll keep track of folks that do sign up after that date to make sure that you get the information and get like day one and the pre-day and everything, because I'm going to start sending out the emails on Sunday, August 20th. I cannot wait for this launch. I have put so much work and effort and thought into the content that I've been putting together for this. I've actually had to stop myself a few times because I'll look and do a word count and I'm like, oh my goodness, this email is over 1,700 words. You need to figure out how to make this a little bit more succinct. And the nice thing is that I have the email content. There's links for additional information. I put you over to my YouTube content, any podcast that makes sense. And then also I've been doing a video per email that goes out as well. So if you're not as much of a reader, you prefer to listen or to watch video content, that's also coming out every day. So I have put this all together. I do hope that you'll join me. If you have any questions about it ahead of time, feel free to email me. It's unleashinghappiness@ceciliahendricks.com. And with that said, for today's episode, I want to talk about habits and the way that you can change your life using your day-to-day habits and really start to identify the ways that you can change those and the questions that you can ask yourself to really identify what it is that you want. I believe it's my second episode. I'll link it below in the show notes as well. That's called What Do You Want? The reason for that episode is because to get started on any life change, you really have to make a decision of what you want your outcome to be. And that outcome it's for you. It's not for anybody else. There's no one else that you should look for to, validate that you deserve it, that you should have it, that it's the right outcome or the wrong outcome. You know in your heart what it is that you want, and any desire that you have as well is going to stem from the state that you're in. So in my past content, I've talked a lot about your state and your identity, and you can only really perceive the world within whatever state and identity you're currently in. If you're struggling in life and everything is, going poorly for you and you're frustrated all the time, that is like the blinders that you're going to have on with your day-to-day life. And the nice thing is that our brains are able to shift and change. Our brains are capable of completely changing the way that they're wired and the things that they're looking for in our perceptions around us. But you have to consciously start to do it. You may have unconsciously shifted into this kind of negative frame state of mind. But if you want to change the other way and you're becoming aware that this is something that you're doing and you want to get out of it, you're going to have to start to consciously be aware of what you're actually doing and consciously aware of the steps you're taking to change that process. And I call it a process because anything like this is actually a habit loop, right? So your habits can be either physical, they can be emotional. It doesn't really matter. You can have a trigger that puts you into an emotional habit loop. A lot of people who've had traumatic events will definitely have this. And I don't even mean just like a traumatic event, like a life-altering, huge traumatic event, although that can be one of them as well. But it can even be something on a, smaller scale. I think I shared here, I can't remember now, but I think I shared here that I ran into a rattlesnake when I was out walking my dog a couple weeks ago. Now, I'm scared of snakes. Period. I am especially scared of rattlesnakes. And I was out on a path that goes directly out. It's a paved path in my neighborhood. We're in a new build neighborhood, and there is a sidewalk that goes, through this field, but it hits an end. It is not continued. And then you have to turn around and you have to come back. So my traumatic event was the fact that I was walking my dog, literally look to my right, and right by the sidewalk was a rattlesnake. Luckily, he did move slightly. That's how I noticed that there was a rattle, and I was terrified. So I know he was alive, but he was not threatened by us. So he was not rattling at us. He, just kind of shifted and stayed where he was. So I don't know if he was digesting or we just really did not bother him, thankfully. So I continued to walk, but then I was like, well, I can't go back this other way. So now for me, if I consider walking down that same path right now, I get nervous. Like that feeling comes back for me of getting nervous. And there's actually a couple other paths now within my neighborhood that make me a little nervous, and I'm paying a bit more attention when I'm walking. I certainly don't want to get bit by a rattlesnake, and I absolutely don't want my dog to get bit by a rattlesnake. And even though logically, sometimes I'll know a rattlesnake's not going to be in this wet grass. Like that's not where they want to be. The grass is wet, it's cold. Logically, I realize this, but my body has this trauma response from that fear of getting concerned that there might be one in that wet grass, and I need to be really careful. And I've had to start kind of working through that, but this is a habit loop that I have, right? So my habit is that I saw a rattlesnake and it scared me. This launched, kind of a response in my body, which is definitely a survival response and to be expected, especially if you're afraid of snakes. But I think most people want to avoid a run-in with a rattlesnake, especially. And so my body had this reaction, and that's been kind of like implanted in my brain is a simple way of looking at it. And I say, okay, I ran into a rattlesnake. I didn't see it, even though I was slightly paying attention. I didn't see it until I was walking directly past it. So now my body and my brain is saying, oh, you're out on this walk again. This path is a little bit similar. You're still within the neighborhood. So let's start to be more aware. Let's have some heightened senses of what we're looking at. This is nothing more than a habit loop. I have a cue, which the cue is that I'm out on my walk through my neighborhood. So a cue can either be like a location, it can be a time, it can be a person, a feeling, a specific event, but there's something that triggers in you, right? And for me, my cue is that I'm out walking in the neighborhood. And so my cue picks up now my new routine that has been implanted in my brain because of this traumatic response. And my routine then is to start being more aware. And I'm also slightly changing my routines of where I walk to walk in areas that I feel are less likely to have another snake run in because I would really like to avoid that. And so then my reward is that I still have my nice walk. I've enjoyed myself and I have not run into another snake. So you can see how your mind and your brain is designed to protect you and it's designed to work efficiently. So my brain is saying, oh, we're in the same queue. I'm going to automatically switch on these reactions because of this event that happened to us just a few weeks ago. But remember, this can happen for many different things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be some sort of traumatic response either. It can definitely be rooted in trauma. I think a lot of our emotional reactions are definitely rooted in some sort of trauma response, whether it's, somebody hurt our feelings or, we had somebody be dishonest with us. We've had a loved one really hurt us. We hurt ourselves either physically or emotionally, or it can be something really huge that we were put into danger. And so now our bodies want to be able to protect us. And so if that cue triggers a certain reaction, we fall into this routine of protecting ourselves. Some of these responses serve us really well, and this routine can serve us, right? Part of my traumatic response to seeing this rattlesnake serves me well. I'm being more aware of my surroundings and I'm being more thoughtful when I'm out walking and I'm paying a little bit more attention. It was like a reminder for me that, hey, you're in this new neighborhood and this is definitely their home too. And they don't want anything to do with you as much as you don't want anything to do with them, but watch it, right? Because they're going to protect themselves the same way that you would protect yourself. But some others are not actually serving us well. We're either lashing out at a loved one, we're talking negatively to ourselves, we're maybe continuing with behaviors that are not serving us either physically, emotionally, or mentally. An example of this would be if you had someone that you cared for very deeply, let's say it's an ex or, somebody you've got a thing for, it's a specific person to you, and you are spending your days constantly searching their social media. And, 4 or 5 times a day, you're going to their social media and you're checking to see what they're doing. This is a habit loop that you have started. It's an emotional reaction that you've started that now also has a physical manifestation of checking on them on this, daily basis, probably multiple times a day. And the reason that you're doing that, you've got to ask yourself, right? There has to be some sort of reward you're getting in it. Either you're getting confirmation that they have moved on and are with somebody else, or you're getting confirmation that they haven't, that you can see from their social, but you're getting some sort of reward. Every habit has pretty much a loop. And different people have different steps within these loops, but essentially you're going to start with a cue. It's something that triggers that, hey, it's time to get kicked off in this routine. Then you're going to have whatever routine that you follow. And at the end of that routine, you get some sort of reward. The reward may not be something that you really notice that you want or are aware that you want. But the best part about changing is that once you become aware of it, you're actually able to change it. Becoming aware is essentially your very first step. You have to say, I want to do this. Actually, I guess the first step would be having the desire, right? Like I want something different in my life. I want a different outcome. I want to do more or to have a different reaction in these kind of situations. Then the second one would be, then you have to become aware. Okay, I'm going to start paying attention. I've identified what I wanted. I've listed out the things that I want in life, who my ideal self would be, what that looks like. I can understand how a person that was living that ideal life would maybe behave on a day-to-day basis. And so now I need to become aware of the habits that I have, the routines that I'm doing that are continuing the same cycle. So awareness and honesty with ourselves is huge, right? And a lot of times it's hard to be honest with yourself, especially maybe if you're stuck in something that you feel like you're persisting with, right? I think a lot of followers of Neville Goddard or like the law of attraction, law of assumption fall into something of saying, well, I'm persisting. Well, you really have to start being honest with yourself about what you're persisting in. And if you're not living a life that you want, you're not getting the emotional reactions that you want, you're not feeling the way that you want, and you're not going to bed with that feeling of how you want to feel about your day, then you need to be honest about the life that you're living and the habits that you're contributing to every single day. Because the more that you do them, the more that it just becomes kind of the default in your mind. And don't let that discourage you. We can have a default that we switch off. That's not the issue at all. So start by identifying what you want, who you want to be, what that looks like. Become aware of your current habitual reactions to life. And that can be physical, like let's say a smoker, somebody who smokes or overeats, you're still getting something out of that, whether you realize it or not. So start becoming aware and honest with yourself about the things that you're doing. And then the next step is start to break up that habit. And let me talk about this in a little bit more detail. When you become aware, you'll start to notice the things that maybe you're starting to do. Like, let's use a specific person again. And you have noticed, like, oh my gosh, I am checking their social 10 times a day. And this is not in alignment with the person that I want to be. It has not worked for me over the past 2 years that I've been, in this behavior and continuing this. I still am not closer. I still do not feel good about the love that I have in my life and how things are going for me. So now I need to be honest with myself that I need to change this routine. And let me take a moment just to say, change can be uncomfortable. Not all change is. I grew up as a military brat, so I'm definitely pretty used to change, and I still have change that feels really uncomfortable, especially when I'm doing it for myself because I want to level up, to the next level. I think I've shared here, I was really uncomfortable to launch this podcast. I still sometimes get a little uncomfortable if a friend or family member reaches out and tells me, hey, I listened to your podcast. And I don't know why. I think it's just like it's change. It's something new. I'm going out there and putting out a lot for the world to be able to see, and that can be uncomfortable. But what always feels really great is when I lean into being uncomfortable, I start to ask myself why I am uncomfortable. What about this is actually making me feel uncomfortable? And then I'm able to start identifying like the real root causes and kind of what those reactions are stemming from. What's my trigger? What's my cue? All right. So at this point, we have identified the outcome that we want. We are being honest with ourselves about what our current routines are and how they are not serving us, or at least the ones that we're paying attention to are not serving us. And the next step is to really identify your routine. So I'm going to use the example of waking up in the morning and spending an hour just scrolling on your phone. So you say, this is not how I want to spend my mornings. I'm spending an hour just scrolling on my phone when I feel like I could do many other things with that time and get my day started off on a much better note. So now you have identified the outcome that you want. You want to start having a much more productive morning. We'll say that you would like to start doing a 20-minute walk in the morning and reading your book for 20 minutes. So you've identified that these are your outcomes. You want to have a more productive morning where you are getting exercise and you are also bettering yourself by reading a book. Now you have also become aware of what is quote unquote preventing you from doing that outcome. And what's preventing you is a current routine where you wake up, you grab your phone first thing, and you spend an hour scrolling on your phone. So we've identified now the routine that we're going through. The next step is to experiment with what's the reward. Why are you doing this? Is it because you want to feel relaxed? Are you procrastinating? Like, there has to be some sort of a reward in there, and you can start to work on figuring out kind of what that reward is and what you're getting out of scrolling your phone. Is it a social aspect that you're looking for? Is it relaxation that you're looking for? And you really want to start experimenting, doing self-experiments on what it is you're getting out of this. So what you can do is start to identify once you're done and you get up, write down kind of some thoughts that come to mind when you're done. So once you start to get out of bed, take a minute to grab your journal. I always recommend having a journal very close by and just kind of jot down some notes of, either feelings, things that you saw, what you're kind of thinking about. And you can start to really pay attention then to what it is that the reward is that you're getting, because any habit has some sort of reward for our brain. I know people talk about like a hit of dopamine, whatever it is, but essentially you want to get a little bit deeper than that. What is it for you that you're getting out of this? If you look at a smoker, even though, let's say maybe 10 minutes after the cigarette, they're kind of beating themselves up that they were smoking and they want to quit. But if you look at the actual reward of the smoking itself, there's some sort of chemical reaction that's happening from the cigarette and the nicotine and the other chemicals that are in there that are giving them the relaxation or kind of the calming fact of having this cigarette. So there's always a reward. So really start to think about, okay, what am I getting out of this? What is this doing for me? It's the same with overeating. If you're struggling with overeating, take a look at what the reward is that you're getting out of that. How do you feel after you've eaten all of that? And it's before the feeling of, ugh, I ate too much and now my stomach sets in. I'm talking immediately after, which is why I say you have to become aware. Really dig in and think, okay, what did that answer for me? It, made my belly feel full. So that kind of relaxed me. It helped me, feel more sleepy. I actually think smoking and overeating are, very much so stress related. So you may be finding as you're going through this, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I'm doing this when I get, hit with a little bit of stress, either around work or maybe a loved one or something within my life is kind of triggering that. And at that point, you're doing step 3, which is identifying the cue. Sometimes a cue can be really easy to identify. Like you may notice, oh my gosh, every morning when I wake up, as soon as I touch my phone, that's my cue to start this routine of just like scrolling through my phone for a flippin' hour. Or you may find that it's a location. As soon as I get home from work in the evening, I'm triggered to go find myself some ice cream in the fridge and eat an entire container of ice cream. And it's because that's, giving you some sort of stress relief at the end of your day. And it's just become a habit. So for me, the way to change this habit that I have found that worked is to notice it. All right. We talked about that part, and then do something about it. Start interrupting it, especially if you can interrupt it with something physical. So an example would be in the morning, and I know I've used this one before, put a Post-it note where your phone usually would be. Put a glass of water where your phone would usually be. Have your phone charged somewhere else. Get it out of the damn way. And then once you go to grab your phone, you'll hit maybe your glass of water or the Post-it note, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, we're doing something different. We are starting to change our identity, and our identity is not with waking up and scrolling our phone for a flippin' hour. We're not doing that anymore. If it's getting home from work and going right for the ice cream, there's a few different things you can do, right? Of course, a lot of this is going to changing your environment, which I'm actually going to talk about next week. This week, I want to focus more on kind of this interrupting, but next week, I'll definitely talk about your environment and changing your environment to be more aligned with the person that you want to be and the things that you want to do. But you can change what you're doing after work to break up that habit. So maybe you still want to go home, but you could go home and maybe have a workout outfit laid out very close to the front door. So it's something that you see. You can have a healthy snack that's available for you where the ice cream would have been, but you can start to kind of break that up. You can also do something simple like take containers. Like if you still want the ice cream, by all means, I am not condoning not eating ice cream. I love ice cream. But so start getting some containers and break out single servings of the ice cream and decide that you're going to show up for yourself and have a single serving and then do something else. Take a walk, do a yoga video, go read a book, journal, meditate, something from your list of joys that you can add in instead of just like mindless mindlessly eating the ice cream. Becoming mindful and aware is one of the best ways to make any kind of habit change because you're just shifting the way that your brain is focusing. And by doing something that is like physically requiring you to either move somewhere else or do something else physically, I believe, and I definitely am not a therapist in this, but I believe that physical action kind of triggers in your nervous system that we're doing something different. We're going to start reacting to these stresses in a different way. We're changing our identity in the way that we see ourselves. And a lot of that is also going to come into the way that you talk about yourself. Stop saying that you're fat. Stop saying, oh, I can't lose this weight. Stop saying, I'm a smoker and I'm never going to be able to stop. Stop saying, I tried to do everything and I can't get out of this rut that I'm in. You can do absolutely anything. And I know that sometimes that sounds really cheesy, but you can. You are completely capable of making any change in your life that you want to make. When people like the gurus and the motivational speakers and the spiritual leaders say this, it's because it's so true. You have the ability to change the way that your mind works. Our minds can literally be shifted to identify and see in the world and perceive the things that we want to perceive. And it is this really beautiful gift that we have. And you just really need the tools and somebody to believe in you, and that somebody is you, that you're able to do this. And you absolutely are. This is available to everyone. And some of us, there's going to be things that are harder than for others. And that's okay too, because there's going to be some things that are much easier for you and harder for other people. That's just kind of part of life. And it's this beautiful thing about being able to grow and learn about yourself and see what you're good at. And the crazy thing is, anything that you're quote unquote not good at, you can absolutely become good at it. But please start talking to yourself nicer. I will definitely dig into that topic more as the weeks go on, because the way that you talk about yourself says so much about the state and the identity that you're in. And the more that you tell yourself you can't do something, the more right you're going to be about it. So as we've talked about interrupting your habit, that's kind of the first step. It makes you become aware, interrupting the routine of your habit. It makes you become aware of like what you're doing. And then you can have a plan for what you're going to do when that happens. So you can actually sit down, and it's beneficial. This is from Atomic Habits, to sit down and say, this is what I'm going to do instead. Right? So it's like what we were talking about with eating the ice cream. If you have a plan that says, when I get home from work at 6 p.m., I'm going to go have a single serving of ice cream, and then I'm going to take my dog on a 20-minute walk around my neighborhood. You have a structured plan that you have given to yourself, so you're not sitting there interrupting your habit and not knowing what to do. You have a plan of what you're going to do for how long and where. So for the example of waking up in the morning and not scrolling your phone, you reach over, you grab, you notice the sticky note, and you say, oh, yep, I'm doing something different. On that sticky note, write out what you're doing different. Add one or two things that you want to add to your morning. So, it'll say like, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to get dressed. So you have your workout clothes ready for you to go, or your walking clothes. And I'm going to walk around my neighborhood for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to read my book, and I'm going to set on a 20-minute timer, and I'm going to sit here on my couch. The more that you do that for yourself, I don't know what it does, but it's like something in the mind. It's just like, oh yeah, I have a plan for this. So don't just set yourself up to interrupt your habits. Have a plan for what you do when you do interrupt them. Now, there are times, and I found this with myself quite a bit, where I may not realize that I'm in a routine until I started paying attention to this stuff. And then all of a sudden I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something right now that I don't want to do. And so I set up a plan for myself that I was like, when I notice something that I don't want to do and I want to physically remove myself from it, I always get up and walk around. You probably picked up on this one. This is kind of a big one for me. But so if there's something at work, like, let's say I notice, oh, when this person emails me, the way that they email me comes across like really harsh to me and I don't like it. And I kind of want to fire back in a way that's not conducive to me getting any kind of work done or having a good work relationship. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to go walk, the floor 3 times before I respond. So I maybe was not aware that this was a cue and a routine that I was even in until I started paying attention to other ones. So be ready for those too, and don't be surprised when those come up. And again, this is where you start leaning into the curiosity. You've already outlined who you want to be. You've already outlined the outcomes that you want in life. You've outlined what it is that you're seeking and how this ideal person, ideal version of you would behave. So start asking yourself, how would the ideal person that I am becoming behave in this situation? Would this be their reaction? Would this be something that they do? The more curious and the more questions you can ask yourself, the absolute better. I'm always digging into asking myself questions. I think sometimes I may get on other people's nerves slightly with the questions. I try not to, but I always want to understand more. Anything that's said or felt or reactions or, a physical habit routine that you fall into, there's a reason behind it. And the more questions that you can ask about who you want to be and why you're not behaving in alignment with that, the better. The last point that I want to touch on today is that if you're struggling to figure out your cue, right? Like you are finding yourself in a routine, but you're not quite sure what the cue is. There's some questions that are from the Power of Now book that I found really helpful on my journey. And they are, when you notice that you're getting into the routine, stop and write down, where are you? What time is it? What's your emotional state? Who else is around? What action preceded the urge? And those will start to kind of show you what the cue is that's triggering you to start this routine. So remember, the first step is to identify your routine. The step 2 is to experiment with the rewards, figure out what you're seeking out of this. And then the last step is to find the cue so that you can start to be more aware of when this is going to kick off and you can start to interrupt the routines that you're in. So I know that this was a lot. I want to do kind of a quick recap again. We're talking about that you're going to start with a desire. You have a desire for some sort of change, to have a difference in your life, to feel better, to have something different. Whatever it is, you start with the desire. Your next step is to identify what you want your outcome to be. You need to actually have an aim. And don't worry about the parts in the middle and don't worry about who says this is right or wrong. Just decide on what your desired outcome is and put your focus on that desired outcome. And then we're going to start shifting habits to be in alignment with that desired outcome. And you'll find the more that you focus on that desired outcome, the more that all of a sudden your natural kind of reactions and habits and awareness and perception start to align more and more with that. Because all that we're doing is we're just shifting our focus. So you're going to shift the focus to your desired outcome. From there, we're going to start looking at the habits that you're doing. What habit loops are you in? Start to become aware of the person that you're being each day. Is this in alignment with that ideal outcome that you want? Is it in alignment with the identity that you want to have, with the person that you want to be? I'm going to say likely not if that's the outcome that you have, because if you already had the outcome, you wouldn't be going through these steps. So start to ask yourself, would X person behave this way? Is this the way that this person would act in this situation? Would this be the reaction of myself if I were truly embodying my ideal self? And if you follow me because of the Neville Goddard community, this is in complete alignment truly with what Neville Goddard says. I tried to take his teachings, which I find phenomenal, and put them into a practical, pragmatic way that I would be able to incorporate them in my life. And I'm telling you, the more that I did it this way and started to really look at my habits and asking myself, is this how that person would behave? The more success that I had. Before, I definitely had success, but it was very hit or miss. And lately, it's been definitely much more hit, which I greatly appreciate. So the last part, after you've become aware of these routines, is to start work on interrupting them and changing them. So you're going to, again, identify what the routine is that you want to change. You're going to experiment to figure out what's the reward, what are you getting out of this? And then you're going to find the cue. And in order to change those, you're going to start interrupting the routine. And you'll do the interruption of the routine, and you'll find the more and more you do this, the easier it becomes. It's pretty difficult, at least it was for me, to get started at first because there was some routines that I would notice and I didn't want to interrupt them. I found this a lot in my morning routine where I was like, I want to be more productive in the morning and I don't want to be on my phone. That's definitely a personal example. And so I would notice it and I wouldn't want to interrupt it. And so I had to really start digging into what was the rewards that I was getting, because clearly I don't want to lose those. So I need to identify what those are. But so I hope that these steps really help you on getting started. Again, I'm going to mention I do have a course that's starting on Monday. It's going to be everyday emails for 14 days, essentially going over smaller bits of how you can get this started in your own life to start making changes. So it'll be down in the show notes. And until next week, have a good one. Hey y'all, thanks again for joining me today. I absolutely love doing this podcast and I hope that you're enjoying it as well. If you did, I would like to ask you a favor and either please subscribe or leave me a rating and a review. It definitely helps me get my message out to more people and I would really appreciate it. You can also find me on Instagram at Unleashing Happiness Podcast and I have my website, CeciliaHendricks.com.